Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another discussion video. Today I really wanted to talk about something that I'm really excited for patch 5.3, and there's going to be a lot of videos like this, but this one in particular really does tick all of the boxes for me personally, and I don't think enough people are really talking about it because I think it's quite a big jump in a certain direction that they've not done before in terms of game development for this game. So firstly, let's look at Unreal Trials and Faux Hollows, which is a new feature added in the 5.3 series and is making its debut. Now, a lot of people are speculating that this new feature is essentially as a result of not having a deep dungeon and having more access to funds, of which they seem to be investing much more into the main storyline, into trials, and indeed into little side distractions like this. We've had ocean fishing, which was quite a well fleshed out series of activities you could do on the open ocean, and you could get a mount, for example, and a minion, and various other titles as well, and that was quite fun. But it's nice to see that we're getting more stuff other than just that. Now, they don't directly say where this Unreal Trial system has come from in terms of the budget, but it's safe to be assured that there's a lot more money floating around since there's a lack of heavy development into the bigger projects such as a deep dungeon, or at least for the time being. Now, of course, if I was to explain Unreal Trials and Faux Hollows to you, how would I do it? That would be the question. So essentially, let's run through some quotes from the 58th letter from the producer live in their entirety, and then talk about the topic as a whole. So to quote Yoshi P during that live letter, primals will be synced to level 80 and you fight those. So that's what the Unreal Trial system is. Well, so far the players have been synced, right? When you were fighting Titan, you were synced to level 50, but now Titan will be, yo, I am level 80 now. One trial per patch for a limited time, and this time around we're going to debut with Shiva. They say, since the fights weren't made for level 80, we can't just bump up the HP, so we'll try to adjust every fight by fight. I am not sure how the costs for doing these will be. Maybe we can get it towards doing 2 trials per patch. So obviously they're wanting to look into this in the future, but currently it will be just Shiva to start with on her own. A lot of people in the development team wanted to do Titan first, but looking at it now, Titan is basically Savage difficulty, a small arena like that. And we also had Stone Skin, we don't now. So I was afraid if we did Titan first, people wouldn't try. Since E8 now has Shiva, I thought why not introduce the original Shiva here. So there's also some discussion as to what happens after you've done those, but let's quickly talk about that then. So essentially they're not talking about re-releasing the same content, they're releasing the same model essentially to fight the original Shiva, but on a completely different difficulty setting that's completely new. The way they talk about Titan and compare it to a Savage isn't necessarily saying that it is Savage difficulty, just that their idea of all of the potential knockbacks, landslides for example, and falling off the actual arena, coupled with the new mechanics, does approach it like a Savage difficulty encounter, because all of those moves will very likely be different or altered in some way to trick the player. In many ways this excites me because it's revisiting something that we've had before for the benefit of improving it, adding a new layer to that storyline, and it's also easy to do. This isn't something that costs an absolute fortune necessarily. To rejig mechanics perhaps does. That's probably the most expensive part of the development of this, in my opinion, but the actual models themselves and the assets are already in the game, and as we've seen with other more recent trial fights in the game, they've resourced a lot of stuff from other fights. It's already there, so they just literally take that mechanic from that fight and that mechanic from the fight over there, and they put them together, and then obviously there's a bit of magic that goes into the coding of that, but essentially you can have stuff from other bosses. That's why we see repeats of Ravana's AoEs, position markers, stack markers, stuff like that. And it only goes to prove to me that they've always got this sort of extra layer of content planned for the game. Now, extreme modes are fun of the original primals, especially if you do them synced. I wouldn't advise that if you want to have any sanity left, because synchronized Titan with a group of pugs is a nightmare. In many ways, I would say that this content is kind of like the bridge between doing Savage content, but perhaps not quite as much. Maybe it's like the entry to that. Maybe it's like an extreme difficulty, like the most recent one we can't mention for spoiler reasons that was added in 5.25. But like just maybe on that border between that and maybe E5S, something like that. Maybe on that border, but I could be completely wrong. We don't know until we get in there. But it sounds like something difficult regardless, but not too difficult to actually complete. The reason I say this is for the second part of quotes here from the 58th letter from a producer live, where Yoshi says, "So what happens if you clear these? Once per week, if you clear these fights, you get to play a minigame every week." Now, they don't talk about what the minigame involves, but there is a picture on the slide of Chloe Aliapo, so it could be pretty much anything. They say, depending on how you do there, rewards will differ. Interesting. So we'll come back to that. When adjusting jobs for new expansions, it is hard to adjust them correctly for low levels. So we thought, why not just bump up the fights to the current level? Taking maintenance cost into account, it is good that we can release these for a limited time and switch fights for upcoming patches. So there we go. So we've got some rather interesting things to do with this topic. So firstly, the rewards that you get from this, they say, will differ depending on how you do there. Now, is that Yoshi P accidentally saying and saying in a different way, oh, well, if you clear it, you're going to get better rewards than if you don't clear it? Maybe you get rewards anyway. Maybe there's a quest system for this. Or is it further speculated that, you know, perhaps if you clear it with 1 or 2 deaths, maybe you get less rewards than if you clear it with nobody dying? Or maybe if you clear it within a certain time period, maybe your rewards increase. You see, there's a lot here that isn't said, but also we don't get confirmation on anything else either. So the speculation is at the moment that perhaps it will be challenging content with certain caveats, like clear the fight under a certain amount of time or with as few deaths as possible to get more rewards or something. I mean, the way that they talk about this minigame to me feels more like a roulette wheel or something. Like you've got your little ticket from your clear and you go there and you put it in a machine, or like you give it to Chloe and she spins a wheel and whatever it lands on you get. Now on the actual screenshot where they do show this, like what I've comically been recently calling face dog, which is essentially this sort of like fox minion, but with a really big stretched face. So that kind of gives you maybe the idea of one of the rewards, perhaps. Maybe these aren't game-breaking things, but maybe they are exclusive to that fight. Because later on, as we said there with the quote there, he says, taking maintenance cost into account, it's good that we release these for a limited time and switch fights for upcoming patches. So this will be time-limited content. So the first time that Shiva comes out in Unreal Trial format for a limited period, who knows how long that will be, maybe a month, maybe more, you'll have access to her, and then she'll be gone for an unspecified amount of time, and then a new trial comes in instead of leaving the trials in the game. So presumably that also means that they have maybe unique rewards on the actual fights. So this is getting into the territory of World of Warcraft. If you've played that game before, it's the only game I can really compare to. I do apologize in advance. Where you have time walking. Time walking in World of Warcraft is essentially old content that isn't relevant anymore. They bump up the level of it basically and tune the mechanics up a little bit and basically allow you to go into a pug group and do that old content for a new reward for a limited time, for like a couple of weeks sometimes maximum, and then they take that away. We've got the Core Hound mount, for example, in that game was a time limited thing from the Molten Core time walking event. Stuff like that. So maybe this is a little bit closer to that than anything else. But it's very exciting to me because the idea of time limited exclusive stuff that you can do with your static in an off season or like in amongst Savage, actually really blows my mind. I've looked for more stuff to do in the game like this, and if they're sort of challenge based with achievements and special rewards for a time limited time, this does make me even more excited, I'll be honest. So really what I want to know from you is what speculation you have for this content. I mean, we've read there the quotes from Yoshi P in the live letter, and that's all we have to go off of, and a couple of slides that really don't mention much in the grand scheme of things. So what do you think this feature will have, and what do you hope that it has? Are you up for a big roulette wheel to spin? Are you looking for just Chloe Aliapo to finally give you 3 lines, but essentially just go throw the book out the window and give you some rewards? But either way, I'm looking forward to playing around with Chloe Aliapo in game again, because her mind must be pretty messed up by now. Perhaps this is a little bit like the Eden raids, where she is perhaps imagining the fights based on the stories you've told her so far. That would be a fantastic story element, and I really, really do hope that is the way it is now. Anyway, thank you kindly for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble for a little bit, and I'll see you all next time.